The Joe Rogan Experience.
Okay.
And now check out Martin Luther King. All right. We had to fight for decades to have Martin Luther King Day. There was a lot of resistance to that. Do you realize that, and a lot of the resistance was the fact that Martin Luther King is the only American man in this country to have a holiday all to himself.
Really?
And guess what? He's black.
What do you mean by a holiday all to himself? What about Columbus Day?
Columbus is not an American.
Oh, that's right.
Okay?
Well, he kind of was when he became one.
No, he thought he...
Well,
no.
he did. First of all, Columbus didn't even land here, and he was like basically a serial killer.
He was a serial killer. He was a rapist and a pillager.
Yeah.
And he didn't discover a damn thing.
Did they call it Indigenous Peoples Day now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how do you discover something when you get there, people are already there? I mean, come on. Be real.
Well,
right?
not only that, like, why did it take until basically the latter half of the 20th century before people came to grips with the fact that he was an atrocious human being? Like, when we were kids, I'm a little bit younger than you, I'm 52. When I was in high school, it was Columbus. Just sailed the ocean blue, the Pinta, the Santa Maria.
Right, Nino Pinto and Santa Maria.
This was a guy who was an explorer. He was going there for Spain.
Right.
And then when you get older and you
learn.
read these missionaries' accounts of the horrific crimes, and
we still celebrate them.
Yeah, well, I mean, do we sort of We kind of are done celebrating them, right?
No, we still have Columbus Day. It should be abolished.
It's Indigenous Peoples Day now.
No, they call it that.
Yeah.
But on the counter it still says Columbus Day.
Does it?
Yeah.
Not on the Apple calendar.
Really? That's cool.
I don't think so.
Maybe Apple's ahead of its time.
I think it says Indigenous Peoples Day now.
Okay, that's cool.
Maybe I'm wrong, but it fucking should.
It should.
Yeah.
Now, so we used to have two white guys who each had a holiday all to himself, Americans.
Who are those guys?
We used to have, maybe before your time, but during my time, George Washington Day and Abraham Lincoln Day.
Really? What were those days?
You don't remember that?
I don't remember that.
Yeah. And then, so we had too many holidays, so they combined those 2 days into
President's
one day
Day.
called President's Day.
Oh, okay. We
Those
had
are
too many holidays, not enough productivity.
Exactly. So they took those away and combined them. So now the only American man who has a holiday to himself is a black man, and they can't handle it. Martin Luther King. And now we had to fight for decades to give this man a holiday when he gave his life to bring this country together. Yet we give a holiday to Christopher Columbus, who, as you pointed out, was a murderer, a serial killer, a pillager, a rapist, who didn't discover a damn thing. All right? Martin Luther King never murdered, pillaged, and raped, but yet we didn't want to give him a holiday. So that's the inequity in this country. And I'll tell you something else. Now, there are a lot of people who would disagree with me, and that's okay, because we're Americans, we can disagree. We're all individuals. But there are people who will agree with me also. And I've been saying this now for 22 years. One of the things that will help us to advance into the 21st century, because we are behind the times, we need, at this point, to get rid of Black History Month. Now, I know a lot of people listening are going to freak out. Well, what's this guy talking about? Blah, blah, blah. Let me explain, all right? For the longest time, we needed Black History Month. Black history was not being taught in our schools. Now, you remember when you pointed out a moment ago that when you were in school, Columbus was a hero, looked up to him, et cetera, and then you go to college and you learn otherwise. When I was in high school, it was not in our textbooks that we had internment camps for Japanese Americans. I did not learn that until I got to college. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me?
Right.
I didn't believe it. Now it's in the textbooks.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We're behind the times.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, we didn't have Black history. All right. Yeah. What we had was called American history. It might as well have been called white history, because that's all it was. And even in some cases, whites were being given credit for things they did not invent and for places they did not discover. But we knew, we were told at home, things like that, but not in schools. So we had to fight. And finally, we got 1 week. It was called Negro History Week. Carter G. Woodson created that. And schools had Negro History Week, 1 week a year. We continued fighting harder and harder. Finally, we got 1 month. Because, nobody's going to give us everything at one time, right? They'd dole it out little by little. So we got that 1 month, shortest month of the year, right? February, 28 days.
Yeah,
okay. No coincidence. But but we accepted it for 2 reasons. It was the birth month of 2 of our heroes, Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. All right? So we accepted that. And then we stopped fighting. And that was a mistake on our part. We became complacent. All right? And now it's my belief that Black History Month has become detrimental to us, to all of us, white and black. I'll tell you why. Yes, we needed it for a certain period of time because we had nothing. But here's the problem. We only study Black history in February. And each February, we study the same half a dozen people. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, and 1 or 2 other ones. By the time we get through half a dozen, our month is over. We did our black thing. Let's move on, right? Yet we study Benjamin Franklin, Eli Whitney, Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Francis Scott Key, all year long. We're constantly reinforcing what they did all year long. We never forget who flew the kite and the lightning hit the key and we have electricity. We all know it's Ben Franklin, all right? But yet, if you ask some kid in June, say, who was Harriet Tubman? Oh, yeah, I remember her, yeah. She was that lady who refused to give up her seat on the bus. They got her confused with Rosa Parks because there's been no reinforcement since February. And then next February, it's the same half a dozen people. All right? So you're constantly, I'm not taking anything away from those people. They were some of the greatest. All right? But you're constantly reinforcing that there were only 6 or 7 black people in this whole country who ever did anything. What about the guy who invented the traffic light? What about the person who invented the ironing board? And so many other black discoveries and inventions. Oh, well, we didn't have time for that. We only have 1 month. Yeah, but you got time to talk about Ben Franklin all year long. Women's History Month is March. We need to get rid of that too. Take these things out of those months and put them where they belong, under the umbrella of American history, and teach them all year long. That way kids get accustomed to this, and they learn, and they have more respect for each other. Look, I remember when I was a kid, Miss America beauty contest. There were only 2 categories, and it was all white women. Black women were not allowed to to compete in Miss America. All the judges were white males. 2 categories: the evening gown, evening wear, and the swimsuit. That was it. Women were objectified. They were sex objects. They didn't have talent. They didn't need to write an essay or show what else they can do. They just looked at and judged on that. So black women were deemed not beautiful enough to compete in Miss America. Plus, they didn't want any white man judging a black woman in a bathing suit or whatever. So black women began having low self-esteem because they were told they were not as beautiful as these other women. So what did we as black people do to elevate the self-esteem of black girls? We created the Miss Black America beauty pageant to give them something to aspire to. And that worked for a while. Finally, Miss America, the big one, came to its senses and opened its doors to
What year was that?
I don't know the exact year, but I guess it was back in the 70s sometime. Opened its doors to all American women, regardless of their ethnicity, color, or whatever. As long as they were American, they could compete. And since that time, we've had more than one Miss America who's been black, starting with Vanessa Williams, and then Debbie Turner, and I think maybe 1 or 2 other ones since that time. So now, because Miss America has come into the time, we can get rid of Miss Black America. We don't need it anymore, right? We got the main one. When are we going to come to American history? We need to get rid of Black History Month. We just finished the first black American president. What are we going to do with Obama? Are we going to put him in the February box because he's black? Only talk about him in February. Don't talk about him in March or September because he's Black History. Put him in February. Well, you know, I don't. I'm at a loss for words, man.
Right.
It's crazy how we do this.